open.
Yeah. I guess just to touch on the anger real quick.
Yeah.
I think for me, I look back and there are feelings of sadness, regret, when I look back at my marriage that failed. But honestly, like the biggest is the anger. I think the anger of what transpired,
Hmm.
the kind of person I was reduced to. And really what I want to say to the listeners is typically the anger that's going to come out first is probably going to be from your wife and or from your partner, your
Hmm.
girlfriend, whatever. And I look back at that and I feel like my ex's anger was very justified.
Hmm.
Like very righteous anger.
Sure. Righteous indignation is real. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like what
Yep.
you were talking about with that, just that Van Helsing, like this is like what the heck are you doing? That's like what I got in my relationship. And I think she was right. But what I was conditioned to believe was that there's nothing wrong with this. Like
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
cheating on you. I'm
Right.
not, like, I
Right.
love you. Like we're married.
Right.
Like I would never, and I never had any issues with that part. It was
Yeah.
just, the porn, anytime I wanted to escape, it just would call my name and I'd go there, right? And then
That's
I
right.
obviously that's bad, but then also the lying about it really is the worst part. And I'll tell
Right.
all the listeners that, like, the
Yeah.
lying about it, like you can work through this with your partner, you can work through this with your wife. Like if you did the math on how many guys have watched porn, I
Oh yeah.
mean it's
Right.
like just about everyone's watched it,
Yep.
unless you're like a unicorn. So
Yep.
there's
Yep.
ways that you can move through it, but the real danger is if you let go of that anger and you let go of how much of that has been an attack on you, and the relationships that you have. And like I was
Hmm.
talking about before, like I want to wake people up to that because
Hmm.
it took me a really long time to figure that one out. Like, it took me hitting rock bottom a few times, on my own without any even realizing it. And then being in a relationship was really the catalyst for me to be like, okay, this is actually something I need to get right in my life, because I'm never going to have a fully fulfilling, loving, nurturing relationship with this in my life. And I did
Because you're
have
split.
that.
Because you're
Yeah.
split. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I did have that for, I think, the beginning of the marriage.
Hmm.
There was a period of sobriety there where really it was
Hmm.
just powered, and I think that's what we talk about too with porn recovery, is like people that are going to get married or going to get into a relationship. It's typically like a lie that you tell yourself
That's
is
right.
like, oh,
That's
like
right.
if I get married, it's going to go away. Like I'm not going
Right.
to, whatever. I'm not going to do it anymore. Or if I get in a relationship or if I have a kid, I'm not going to look at porn anymore. And that might distract you for a while, but if you don't go to the very root of like your purpose and that inner Van Helsing in you, it's
Hmm.
going to come back if that was something that was feeding on you earlier in life. And I think
Right,
that what,
because
yeah,
the thing hasn't been exercised,
yeah, you
right?
haven't vanquished it
Yeah,
yet.
right.
And that's
It's still floating around. It's just hiding.
and that's
It
the right word for it.
yeah,
And the
right,
exorcism takes it
right.
takes a liturgy.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
and the other thing that you need to understand, Mac, too, is the need to lie about it, and the feeling of shame that you actually had for it is proof that you are good. I don't mean a
Mm,
good person, that the body
Right.
matters,
yeah,
that
Exactly.
all of it matters, because you wouldn't lie about it if it didn't. Um, so it's like what Augustine said about evil. Evil is proof that we are free.
mhm. So
And
good. So good.
you know what I mean? Because it means our assenting to God or Christ is also not coerced. It's not a seduction. It's a free act of the will. So all of this that we've been talking about is this sacrilegious inversion of the good. And
Mhm.
it's out of a covetous envy, a monstrous envy, that goes all the way back to Satan himself.
Yeah.
And I call people who suffer from this, they can become this. I don't think most do, but they can become what I call ruiners.
Mm,
They take
Yeah.
on, they decide that they're going to take over the vampire's throne, and they become Iagos. And they say to themselves, were I Othello, then Iago I would not be. And because they cannot be Othello, then they have to set out to prove that the Othellos cannot exist. And you notice that in that play, the mechanism of Othello's destruction is to be seduced by a deception and then to commit an
yeah,
act of his own free will.
right.
So it's a great topic. Mac, and I'm glad that you invited us to participate in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and this is kind of fitting actually. So maybe we can close it down. But as we were talking about an exorcism, I actually had a dream. It was very when you get those really realistic dreams. In this one, there was I think this was about like maybe it was maybe it was a little bit after like when I my sobriety when it started back up. Because I'm almost at a year now. And I think it was probably,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. It was probably at maybe like a few months after that when I was getting really back into it. Because there is a period of time where you first relapse where you're just in this really bad spot where it takes a little bit of time to like get your first days, like true days of sobriety in front of you to where you can have a really clean day and then you can build, right? And it felt like I was really getting some good momentum. Typically it's around 3 months or so. Like if you're doing it really well and you're really investing in yourself, you have a lot of good momentum. But anyways, I had this dream that there was this demonic force that was trying to kill me and my family. And it felt so real. And it was like this physical manifestation of this man like in a car trying to run us over. And I remember my dad actually stuck a rebar pipe through the windshield and killed the guy. But in my head, I knew that this was more than just a man. So I was anticipating that there'd be some demonic force. And in my dream, I committed an exorcism of this demon. And like I literally like just said like stand back, you devil. Like in my dream, like the power of God, like I felt the power of God with me, and I just kicked the crap out of this thing and exercised it. And when I woke up, I was like the first thing I did. Like I told you, like I talk to my brother every day. We're in this journey together, which is so cool. I called him. I'm like, dude, like I just did an exorcism in my dream,
That's so good. That's so
and then,
badass.
I know. And then it's crazy. And then I had another dream maybe a few months after that where it was like 3 attractive women were bringing me into a basement, and I like totally like just resisted them. And I think they said they needed help or something, probably like the introduction to like a porno, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I started to walk down the stairs, and I just remembered, I think the lights were off. I turned them on, and their faces started to morph into these terrifying faces. And then the lights shut off, and I like shoved them off, closed the door, like locked it. Those 2 dreams to me, I think it awakens an anger in me, like a white hot anger. And it's really just like the white hot, I think it's like justice. It's like,
burns. Yes, that's right.
It's like the burning white light of justice that I hope I can bring to the space, like bring to X, bring to, YouTube podcasts. I could just put it out there so people can sit on it, think about it. But it's a white hot anger because I feel like I wasn't the person that I thought I was, really. And I feel like I never quite could look people directly in the eye when I knew that I had just looked at porn like a day before, and like I'm seeing my grandma or my grandpa. Like my grandpa used to ask me all the time, like, hey, are you praying your rosary? Are you going to church? I think he was trying to check in on me. And I'm sure those days where I met him, I might have looked at porn the morning of. And it's just like this incongruence, and you get so upset because you're like, this is what I was like brought down to, like my knees, like a dog, like this dog that every time I heard the bell, I'm just going to it. And
Pavlov's dog, right?
It pissed me off so much. I'm like, I am a creation of God. I'm an autonomous human being. I have dreams. I have hopes. I have things that I want to do in life. And if I just stick to this relationship with this vampire, I'm sure going to do things in my life, but there's always going to be that incongruence. It's always going to be tainted by this relationship. I'm never going to be fully feeling like myself. There's always going to be this part of me that I'm kind of putting off to the side to say, hey, this is Mac, but then this is Mac with porn.
Well, remember, what is it? It's in Ephesians, right? Everything shall be known in the light. And I think that we have to remember that, we're going to have to offer an account for everything we've done. and it's terrifying, admittedly terrifying on some level, but it's also, there's a tremendous amount of freedom. It's like, no, it actually matters. It matters how I am in public. It matters how I am in private. It matters away. And dude, I love the dream that you just shared with us, because that's a gift. I'm a big believer in this. I'm very comfortable with the woo, but I'm it's a great dream. And notice, I want you to pay attention to the role that your father played
Yeah.
in that scenario, right? He's the one who takes the rebar and takes the first shot. And in essence, is the little narrative that you laid out for us. In essence, it kind of gave you permission to slay the damn demon, right? And you keep talking about this sort of this inner Van Helsing, right? You are preparing yourself to be the father that your own father has given you permission to be, right? And I think that is, talk about meaning, talk about purpose. Like, you are preparing yourself to be the Van Helsing you're kind of imagining. I think that's just so damn important. I mean, it's so important.
And I would add to that the Father is your figure for the Father in heaven.
That's right. That's right.
Who has given you permission to be the you that he made you to be. And I'm also reminded by the dreams of the end of No Country for Old Men. Because the Father rides ahead.
Yeah. Right.
And the Son has to realize that the fire that the Father has lit has to be tended, and it has to be fed, and it has to be nurtured by the Son in his role as the head of the family. And I would also give you a line from my novel, The Incorruptibles, that my father Rose says, Mac, places are not haunted, people are. So, and I'm a lucid dreamer, so I take dreams very, very seriously, because I know that, what we've been talking about this whole time is that there is a war going on around us between powers and principalities. Right. It is a spiritual war. And everything that we've been talking about is part and parcel of that war. And I know there are a lot of people out there that would think that I'm nuts for saying it, because people ask me sometimes, do you believe in ghosts? And I'm like, no, I don't believe in ghosts. If I was a demon and I wanted to seduce me, I would appear to me as my loving grandmother.
Right.
And don't forget the line, and I know Kale knows it from St. Thomas More, Satan, the proud spirit, cannot bear to be mocked.
Can't be laughed at.
So the weapon against this is self-deprecation and humor. Recognize what it is that is trying to entice you, and see it for the ridiculousness that it is.
Great point.
And then mock it. Yeah. And that's your Van Helsing. It's
great.
not.
I love that.
It's not that that fear-filled get thee behind me, Satan, although I admire that.
Yeah.
It's also a recognition of that, because I've been haunted my whole life. Kale knows a little bit about this. And I got to the point where when I would have these encounters, I would recognize it for what it was.
Yeah.
And I would just shake my head and say,
nope.
No, it doesn't scare me.
Yeah. That's great. Gosh, that's great.
Because I figure there's a reason I'm being stalked. So I'm like, okay, and that just redoubles me in my efforts to be a good man. Which I don't do perfectly, but it's something that we as men need to encourage other men.
Yeah, we have to say it out loud. I mean, you have to say it out loud. I want to be a good man. I aspire to be a good man. Mock me all you want, but that is the point. And boy, not a lot of that, man. Not a lot of that. Especially, Greg, you invoked earlier, the sort of the whole kind of manosphere thing. And, my concern about the manosphere stuff is that it's sort of this, it's actually, it's male to male transness. It's like, it's so fake and counterfeit, it's like it's play acting at what some little boy thinks a manly man is. And it's like, no, it's not that, because it's not manly. Yeah. It's not manly unless it's good. Right. It has to be good. It has to be oriented to the good.